Greetings, I'm Mark Riley, and welcome to the Washington Tattoo Podcast, where the world's musical traditions come to life. The Washington Tattoo is an international music and arts festival coming to the Washington, D.C. metro area. Our podcast explores the lives and stories of world-renowned musicians, dancers, producers, choreographers, artists, educators, arts advocates, and those who serve our cultural communities at large. For more information and donations, find us at www.thewashingtontattoo.com. Now please enjoy this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast, sharing the power of the arts, one story at a time. All right, greetings everyone. I have two special guests here tonight. This is incredible. So two drumming legends, Glen Crosby and Ralph Hardimon. Glen is the program coordinator and director of percussion for Pacific Crest Drum and Bugle Corps. He currently leads the marching percussion program at UCLA while working with Arcadia High School and the Arcadia Music and Arts Symposium. Over Glen's career, he has worked with the Garfield Cadets, Santa Clara Vanguard, Velvet Knights, Capital Regiment, Glassmen, Freelancers, Blue Knights, Academy, and Carolina Crown, achieving 5 DCI World Championships and 5 high percussion awards. Glen is a member of the Vic Firth educational team, a Remo artist, a Zildjian artist, a Mapex drums artist, and lives in Long Beach, California. Glen, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon.
No, my pleasure.
And then we've got Ralph Hardimon. Ralph Hardimon is a Drum Corps International and Percussive Arts Society Hall of Famer. He's also received the Lifetime Achievement Award from Sabian Cymbals. He's a Vic Firth Signature Series artist and renowned composer and arranger. Ralph performed with the legendary Velvet Knights and Anaheim Kingsmen Drum and Bugle Corps, and later served as director of percussion with the famed Santa Clara Vanguard Drum and Bugle Corps. In addition to marching percussion achievements, Ralph has been successful in the record industry with having Grammy nominations for jazz and rhythm and blues. Also in the entertainment industry, Ralph has worked for the Walt Disney Company and also with the iconic football bowl games such as the Citrus Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and the Super Bowl. Ralph, thank you so much for taking the time also this afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
All right, so this is a treat for me. Both of you guys I've known in passing over the years, and we've kind of stayed in contact with each other online, and with Facebook and social media, we've been able to stay connected, but I think this is the first time I think all three of us are in the same room together, getting a chance to speak with one another.
Nice.
That's true.
So this is a first for the podcast to have three of us on here. So what I'd love to start doing, having both of you here, I mean, how did you first get to know each other back in the day?
Want to go first now?
I'll go.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I knew of Glen probably before he knew me because he stuck out big time when he was marching in the Blue Devils. And when he was marching there, I was teaching the Santa Clara Vanguard. And he reminded me so much, and he was like one of the tenor players we had over there named Scott. Good old Scott. Scott and Glen were like this too. They were, of course, the two drum lines were very competitive, and back and forth. And so it got a little thick sometimes. So us staff guys decided that the only people that could speak really were Scott and Glen. And so those guys used to go at it like you wouldn't believe it. Each time the drum line would pass or, we'd see each other or something, those guys would just fire off. And I think I'll just leave it at that of what they would say. But, you can picture, two youngsters that are 20 years old that are getting ready to age out of the activity, tough guys, players extraordinaire, and great mouths to back it up. So that's how, that was how I knew of Glen. But later on, after he had aged out of the Corps, I had heard that he went out to do some work with cadets. And I was like, yeah, Of course, he pretty much showed those guys what it was like to execute properly, and they just started smashing everybody, you know. And so I was like, I want him to teach over here with me. You know, and because I just assumed that he was a great teacher, and found out that was definitely the case, and then some. So I called him up and said, hey, man, want to come on over here and teach, you know? And of course, I had talked to Gail Royer about it. He was the corps director, the famous Gail Royer. And he said, yeah, well, you know, I got this much money for him and blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, well, let's see what Glenn has to say. So I told Glenn, you know, we're on the phone. And I was all, yeah, you know, Gail said it's cool and he's got this much money, you know, for you. And Glenn says, that's not enough. I went, okay, well, come on out to California anyways. I'm sure we could work something out. And fortunately, I think, you know, he was on his way back for whatever reason. But we got together, and so Glenn was at rehearsal, and there's Gail Royer over there. And I went over to Gail and said, hey, you know, Glen Crosby is here. You know, you should go over and talk to him. He goes, so what did he think about, you know, the price? I said, he said it sucked.
You know what? You know when that was? It was at the, because the season had already started. It was like in June. I had moved back out. I was
right.
back home in Toronto for a couple of years after I aged out teaching cadets. And I moved back out and got married in Northern California. I was teaching Blue Devils B Corps for a little while. And that just kind of fizzled out. And it wasn't really what I wanted to do anyway. So when Ralph called me, so all that, everything you're saying is absolutely true. So at the Sacramento show, I think it was. I remember it anyway. I walked up because you said, all right, Gail's over there. I was like, all right. So I go walking up and he goes, so did Ralph talk to you? I go, yeah. He said, did he tell you how much money it is? He goes, yeah. He goes, is that enough? No. I basically told him I'm working a full-time job, and if I'm going to leave for the rest of the summer, I need to make what I was making at the job. So I was like, it wasn't a huge difference. But I think with Gail, it was kind of funny because he likes being direct, or he always liked being direct. So I think he kind of liked the fact that I just flat out said, no, it's not enough. If I need this to come on the road. And he just said, okay. It was like, and that was it. That was the negotiation.
Bingo. So, of course, we became great friends. And, you know, we hung out, and I took Glenn out to eat at a couple of places, you know, like some high-end joints. And I remember the first time I took him out, was it the Swiss place or was it the Chinese place?
It was a Chinese place.
Chinese place, you know. Very upscale Chinese restaurant in San Francisco where I lived. And, of course, he lived in the Concord area at the time, so it wasn't too far of a trip. But we went over there, and so we're eating away and grubbing, and, you know, I ordered a bunch of stuff. And so Glenn was digging it. He was eating, and I was going, all right, a cuisine master. And so, yeah, so what is this? And I looked at him, and I was waiting for him to ask. I think it was something like that, wasn't it, Glenn?
Yeah.
I said, squid, you know, because there was squid. And he goes, this is delicious. And I was like, so,
well, I mean, at that point, I was pretty unrefined in terms of cuisine. That's why, I mean, I can credit you with my knowledge of anything to do with wine and good food. It's like, that was hilarious. I was just sitting there grubbing away some, you know, big old chunk of squid, deep fried squid and some sauce, eat it. It's like, man, what is this? Squid? Yeah, cool. It's like, I'm not even going to flinch.
Yeah, and he loved it. I went, okay, my kind of guy. You know, and so we started talking about, you know, drumming and this and that, and basically just got to work right away because, like he said, it was in the season, it started already, and I think we were getting ready to start second tour. Yeah. So it was just like, well, just hop in, and, you know, we weren't really specific on, you know, what we wanted to, what I wasn't specific of what I wanted him to do because I wanted him to do whatever he wanted. You know, that's the way I was with all of the guys. And if something wasn't quite working around me, and I'd whisper in here and go try something different or whatever. But never had to do that with Glenn. And, you know, we just became the best of friends, and to this day, and we talk almost daily.
Yeah.
You know, even though I'm in Denver now and he's in, you know, California, Southern California, where I used to live. So, you know, we stay in touch, and this is great. You know, when we found out that you wanted to do this with us, Mark, you know, we're just ecstatic about it, and here we are.
Yeah.
Chatting away.
Any chance to hang with Ralphie is a good time. We laugh. Well, you've already seen that already. It never stops.
All the time. We have to. It's just part of it. You know, it really is.
Well, I think we'd all be remiss if we didn't thank Murray Gussick for this. So Murray was the matchmaker for this event. So Murray, thank you so much for the advice.
Yes, thank you very much, Murray. What a guy, Murray. What a guy.
So I love drumming history, music history, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I have a large tie to the East Coast scene when it comes to drumming and the drumming tradition there.
Yes,
I really have learned to love a lot of kind of the West Coast style and where that kind of came from in that development time period from, you know, the 1960s into the 1970s time period. So could you walk me through a little bit of some of that scene? Like, what were some of the big shows, or, you know, the influential people? I know you have like guys like Tom Float and, you know, Fred Sanford. What was that scene like in the 60s and the 70s?
Well, for me, everything was rolling around pretty quick and natural. I started out in 67 or 68 in the Velvet Knights. And I found out that Forrest Clark, who was the principal timpanist for the LA Philharmonic, was teaching over there. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I was in the Los Angeles Junior Police Band for years prior to that, 3 or 4 years. So I was really learning about rudimental drumming and this and that, and, you know, seeing the band in parades and stuff. So, you know, we had the state championships every year, and it was for marching band as well as drum corps. So, of course, it was time for state, and police band's going, and the word's going, you know, yeah, you know, we got to see the corps, but be very careful, because Officer Horde didn't really like us going to the drum corps shows, because he'd lose a lot of members every year. Okay, so of course, you know, I wanted to see corps. I didn't know anything about it. I heard a little bit, and so the first corps I saw was the Velvet Knights, and I fell in love with them. You know, they're a real mixed group in terms of ethnicity. You know, there was everything you can imagine, which was what I was looking for. You know, and that was a cue to go check them out, and it was just, this core stuff was just so fabulous to me, you know, just watching the way everybody's hands were working and this and that. And so I went and joined. I remember auditioning for Forrest Clark, and here he is, this short little guy, no more than 4.5 feet. And he smoked these cigars, and this was really funny. He had this cigar that was about this big, a little bit of it left, and it had like a toothpick in it. And I'm in this room with him, and he's got this tam on, and he's sitting there trying to light this thing, going, and he looks over at me, he goes, "You play paradiddles?" And I was like, well, yeah, you know, come to think of it, that's about all I can play, really, I'm saying to myself. So he's trying to spark this thing up, and he goes, "All right, we'll play some paradiddles." So, you know, here I am on this practice pad, this little Remo practice pad. And so I went, paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. I played 4. That's what usually somebody says play paradiddles, you know, you play 4. So he's still lighting this thing up. All of a sudden, these sticks come over and go whack on the pad. And I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. And I was startled. And he goes, "Who told you to stop?" You know, and I'm looking down at this guy, because I'm taller than him, even though I was like 14 years old then. And so I just started ramming some more paradiddles, and I started speeding up a little bit and getting faster, which I didn't really want to do. And so he's going, yeah, you know, like this. And, you know, I guess I took it up as fast as I could go. And that's the one thing I remembered about Velvet Knights. After 3 years of that, I moved over to the Anaheim Kingsmen. I'd become a pretty decent player, and I wanted something a little bit more challenging. And those guys were certainly stepping up to the plate. So I went over there and I learned quite a lot from Don Porter Jr., who was the drum instructor at the time, as well as Jerry Kirby, who was a charter member of the Troopers. In fact, him and Fred Sanford joined the Troopers at the same time. And the funny thing about it is they were like neighbors, and they used to like throw rocks at each other in the backyards. That's how far those guys go back. So that was kind of neat to learn all about that in the future. But Jerry Kirby was this chops guy. And so, you know, that's where I learned all of this chop stuff. And I don't know, that was pretty cool times. And, you know, that was how things progressed along. And as far as I was seeing it on the West Coast, as things went on, of course, Fred Sanford had the Anaheim Kingsmen and the Santa Clara Vanguard were big time competitors. Even though we were the first DCI champions, the Anaheim Kingsmen, I'm proud of that. Those guys were, in my own eyes, I think they probably should have won. But, you know, that's my own, you know, I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
I thought they were better than us. But then, you know, of course, I'm looking at all of Fred's stuff, and I'm really stoked for what's going on because, you know, his stuff was a little bit more what people would call musical. And the Kingsmen, you know, we're all about, you know, chops and stuff. And because of my oldest sisters were musicians, I had a kind of an idea of how to decipher between the two, which was going on. And I liked both styles. So Fred had a lot to do with what was pushing in the West Coast. He had a lot of indirect influence, as well as, you know, the Anaheim Kingsmen back in the day of what everybody else was doing, the bands. And of course, as things went on, the corps got better. Then WGI came along, and that's when everybody and their grandmother really started getting chops. And yeah, I mean, it's big time. And then the Southern California circuit is where everybody and their grandmother, you know, I mean, to this day, that's where all the chops are coming from, and they've influenced everybody in terms of college and high school across the country and overseas. A lot of it is coming out of Southern California area where I grew up at and where Glenn is teaching. Glenn is a huge influence out there, you know, and he's worked with a few groups here and there, but everybody knows who's in charge out there. It's Mr. Glenn. So Glenn, why don't you jump in a little bit and let's hear your part of it. Mine was, you know, the parades and Fred Sanford and the corps, and of course my sisters being, you know, that part of the influence. But yeah, chime in on that a little bit.
I mean, well, for me, I grew up outside of Toronto. I was born in Toronto, so I'm a transplanted Canadian boy.
Bacon head.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, going back to when I started, it was like there's no high school marching bands per se, almost at all. I think there was a couple independent groups, but there was a ton of little drum corps in the area in southern Ontario around Toronto. I started out with this little Lions Club thing. It was like a little drum and bell corps with like baton twirlers and stuff. And just from there, but it was too bad because there was two corps that were actually based in Toronto that were, you know, A class was what the open class was, or world class now. The Seneca Optimists and the Etobicoke Oakland Crusaders. And I was just at the point where I wasn't quite old enough to get into them. And by the time I was, because I know when I was 16, Seneca Optimists were just kind of like on their way. It was spiraling down. Because I had auditioned and did a couple parades with them. So at that point, most of the drum corps stuff kind of just disappeared up around there. So I went to see a show in 1974 with my dad down in Toronto that had like Muchachos, Madison Scouts, Kilties, all the old groups, man. It was like, and I was just sitting there going, whoa. And then a few years later, in 1978, we went and saw another show downtown. We actually walked around and watched some groups warm up, because I remember seeing like Santa Clara's Line in 78, and then Blue Devils line, and just kind of walk around and just being completely mesmerized by these, everyone looking 9 feet tall and just playing and just looking at this as a 16 or 17-year-old going, what the heck is going on here? So as soon as I had the chance, I jumped ship and went to Blue Stars for a summer, and I ended up in 13th place. And that's actually Jerry Kirby taught that year. He taught me that one year. Very cool dude.
Yes.
And then from that point, I was like, well, we were 13th that year, and being a 17 or 18-year-old kid, I'm going, well, I remember saying, if I'm going to spend my entire summer doing this, it's not going to be in 13th place. So, so I went out and auditioned for Blue Devils, and luckily I made it. And I actually switched. I was a snare player up until I went to Blue Devils. I always wanted to play tenors. Like even back in the day, I remember the guy that in the little group that I was in, I played snare, but the guy that played like the big multi-tom trio setup, I used to love putting that thing on. And back then, I mean, there's no harness. It was like the harness was like some kind of, you needed about 5 people to help you get every strap that went around this way, that way, and how you could even play. And the drums were set up. It was like the biggest drum was in the middle. So he had it was like a 16-inch tom in the middle, and then like a 14 and a 12 on the outside of that. So even like when I was like, 12, 13 years old, I would try and put those things on and just kind of mess around. So I always kind of gravitated towards doing that. So when I went to Blue Devils, I was going, all right, I want to play tenors. So I spent 4 years there. And it was funny. I think my 3rd year, I thought about going back on snare, because I remember putting on a drum and hopped in the middle of the 10 of them. It was, I think I had a 10-man snare line in '83. And of course, I had no, traditional chops left. But I was just in there and kind of going, you know what, this is kind of cool. And I went to Scott Johnson and said, I think no. He just, no, go back over to the tenor line. You're anchoring that section until you age out. Just stay there.
No.
That's taken care of. So just forget that and just get back over there. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Anyway, I like that better. But I moved to LA in 1990, so I've been here 30 years now.
Wow.
Which that's mind-boggling to me that I've lived in LA longer than anywhere else now, and I'm from a Toronto boy, but it was like Toronto up till 17, Northern California until I was 21, 23 or so, and then down here for the last 30 years, and it's amazing. The community down here is pretty incredible.
Yes,
it really is. I mean, as far as rudimental drumming or just the indoor scene, especially, this is the mecca. There's so many good instructors down here. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of ones and develop some of the younger ones that are coming up now too. So, yeah, at first the indoor stuff, it took me a while to get used to, just because acoustically it sucks. I mean, just being in a gymnasium is the worst place you can take, 500 drummers and then put a sound system in front too.
Playing it fortissimo.
Yeah, so it took me some time. It took me some time to just get past that and realize, you're still teaching. You can still have a positive influence. And even with the movement at first too, it took me a while to get used to that. I've told this story a million times where I was working with Pulse snare line one day, and they played a phrase and played it really poorly, and so I'm going, what am I going to say? Because there was so much movement involved. I'm going, all right, this is time to think outside the box. It's like, if you're going to stay relevant as a teacher, it's like, this is what it is now, and it's evolved to this. So either you have something to say or you don't. So I flashed on my daughter's ballet classes. She used to take private lessons, and I would sit and watch. If I'm around a teacher of any kind, I'm listening to what they say to see if you can pick up on anything that you might use, or just see parallels between different artistic endeavors, So, just all the stuff about talking about your core and, everything. And it's like, I went up to the snare line and just did exactly something that I heard from this ballet instructor. Didn't say a word about what they played, and they went back and they played the hell out of the phrase. And I just kind of went, oh, okay. I turned around, walked away, and was just laughing at myself going, wow, that works. So it's like, this is what it is. It's like, that's part of, the whole point is you're trying to get people to sound better and understand how to produce that. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about the hands, the brain, the soul, or just what the body has to do now. It's all part of it. So it was like, once I got comfortable with that, I really loved doing it. And it was interesting how you have to come up with new ways. I found myself finding different ways to clean on the floor, especially with, again, an easy example would be, I remember Pulse was doing this thing where the snare line was in a circle and it was just kind of rotating. I don't know what it was doing, but I was going, all right, how can we clean this? And we would they play the entire phrase in place, then rotate 4 to 8 counts, play the entire phrase, rotate more, play the entire phrase, and then eventually put it together so their ears would get used to how the sound would travel when they were moving, and it worked. So it's like I mean, the thing I've always loved about teaching is being involved in something where you can contribute and learn at the same time. So I like being in those positions where you're going, I have no idea what to do with this right now, but I better figure it out.
Exactly.
I love that you're bringing all this up, because I remember taking lessons when I was very young with my teacher, Nick, and he was super old school. So to hear, Ralph, your story about the sticks hitting the side, and what is that? I can picture that. But
Yeah.
then now going through all of the years you've taught, to Glenn's story and how to teach those conceptual things, the education of music and the education of rudimental drumming has just really, it's exploded in the last 50 years. And this idea of like science meeting art and how that balances. And honestly, you're talking about the transcending of concepts from a ballet instructor to a music instructor. I mean, really that educational bridging that's happened over the last 40, 50 years, it's remarkable. And it's really great to see, to have you both here kind of talking about how those bridges have been built over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you got something, Ralph?
Well, always something. I'll chime in a little bit. You know, I'm just flashing back on the things that I listened to growing up, which is one of your fortes, Mark, with the drum and fife and the colonial style, as well as the Swiss Basel drumming and you know, that whole thing. I remember just really being interested in checking out what everybody else is doing, the Scottish as well, you know. And I was going, wow, this is really cool, you know. And we started playing a couple of Scottish things, you know, even in the Kingsmen. And then Fred, you know, used to write a few things for Santa Clara. And we just really got behind some of the traditional stuff. And as we implemented some of these things back into marching percussion, if you will, you know, a lot of people were freaked out and going, oh my God, you know, where'd you get that? And I'm going, well, you need to study some Basel drumming. What is that? You know, well, I'll help you out a little bit and, you know, turn you over to some books. And the same thing with, you know, the Scottish thing. You know, I talked to a lot of the individuals growing up about how that swings so much. I mean, it just swings. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And people are going, yeah, you know, that's, and I'm going, yeah. So you could look at this as jazz, because it's kind of the same, you know, interpretation. You know, there's some techniques that you can apply from, you know, the Scottish and the Swiss drumming over into what we're doing. Then it'll be a fresh thing, and it'll be an educational thing, because you can learn what it's all about, all the way down to the scoring of the music. You know, the top and bottom with the you know, the Scottish stuff, and just the Swiss drumming, the way the phrasing and the musicality, if you will. You know, I'm going, well, this is a perfect example of musicianship and drumming here, you know. And you can tell that Fred was influenced by it. You could tell a lot of people were indirectly influenced, and it was really nice to start talking to people about it. Well, you know, I think this is the grandfather of where you guys are coming from over here. Check this out and look at this approach. Look at the interpretation. Look at the phrasing. I mean, talking about musical drumming, man, the Swiss, geez. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they kick butt on all of us, even though, you know, our drum corps thing is like really incredible in terms of chops and this and that. But in terms of musical drumming, which is, a lot of people don't understand that. And I'd say, well, then, you know, here's some examples of where it all came from. And to me, that's the Swiss guys. I mean, if I'm sure that makes sense with you, with your style of drumming, your approach. I love watching you play, And then you're not afraid to phrase. And when there's a crescendo, there's a real crescendo. When it's playing soft, you're playing it pianissimo way down here. And you know, the strokes are like from here way down to, you know, as high as you can play. And that was one of the things that I always like to teach the marching guys. I'm going, well, if you're a drum set player, if you're any other kind of percussion player, there's strokes that you can barely see, and there's strokes that are all the way up here, whether you're playing congas or Latin percussion or whatever. So we need to implement this into our thing, because when I first started out, we were playing really, really low and everything was cool. And I'm going, well, you know, we need to put a little bit more expression into this, and how you do it is like you got to raise your hand every once in a while, you know? So that was kind of fun, implementing that stuff and teaching some of the kids some of the history of where some of this stuff came from, our roots, and which I think is really important to this day, you know. So yeah, I like talking about that stuff, and I'll get into it maybe a little bit later on, some more specific things. But yeah.
Well, and Glenn, you brought up a really interesting point from my perspective too, because I remember being at a PASIC, I don't know, probably 15, 16 years ago now, and I was sitting at the bar with John Wooten, and at the old guard, we were actually arguing about if these traditional stylistic rudiments should not be stylized. And he's like, oh man, they've got to be. Like, that's the jazz part of it. And I was like, how, with my music education background and my classical studies now,
Sure.
How do I take kind of the modern drum corps approach to try to teach these stylistic interpretations? And honestly, we got a lot of stuff from Santa Clara Vanguard and Blue Devils on, like, these are the top marching groups in the world. How do they do what they do, and how can we maybe put this one little Lego that's a little bit different, and we put the stylistic Lego in this one block and try to quantify how we're going to approach style? So when you're talking about how you broke down that drill and how the listening was in that drill, we had to really do the same exact thing musically with how we were going to choose to go with constant time and then suspended time, and constant time and suspended time. And that was only because of where modern drum corps has taken it, that we were able to break it down to that kind of science. And that's why I think, honestly, it's been a lot of fun to go down that rabbit hole, because you start talking about grids, you start talking about feet and how everything locks in with your feet. And I remember being at one of my first Swiss drumming parades, and I was playing with this one group, and there was a pickup flam 5-stroke roll that was supposed to end on my left foot. So we're marching, I'm playing this 5-stroke roll, and I'm trying to keep my feet still like in phase with everybody else. Their feet are still going, my left foot hits, and my right foot's about to go, and we still haven't played the roll yet. And my brain is exploding, but it's such a different approach from the traditional side of the house to, you know, kind of a modern marching education side of the house. And so what's been a lot of fun is trying to dissect all of that and find where the intersections are. So it's been a blast.
Yeah, it's a never-ending world. I mean, percussion especially, there's so much that can be implemented from other musical worlds into drum corps. That's one of the great things about what Ralph did, you know, or has done for his entire career, is just be open-minded enough to say, all right, I'm going to put a ride cymbal in a place where no one would think about doing it, and it worked. You know, and that really inspires a lot of people. I know when I think about just it's Ruben Blades put an album out called Mundo, won a Grammy about, it's probably 20 years ago now. It seems like a couple of years ago, but it's probably about 20 years ago. But some people just have that instinct of quality to take any style of music and make it work with something else. And it takes risk, but you just have to, I mean, really it comes down to, like I was saying, just listening to so many different styles, and that's going to influence what you do. Even from a technique standpoint, I had a conversation with Jim Chapin one time at a NAMM show, jazz guy, and he was a big Moeller guy. And a lot of people try and use Moeller now, and I see the way they explain it, and I'm going, that's interesting, because I talked to a guy who actually was taught by Moeller, and he broke it down in one quick sentence for me. You know, I saw him at a NAMM show, and like, you see someone that has that much wisdom, you make a beeline when they're hanging out by themselves.
That's right.
See if I can catch something there. So I was chatting with him, and I go, so tell me what the foundation for Moeller technique is. And he just said, the arm generates the motion of the wrist. That's all I had to say, and I went, okay, I get it. And so I immediately went to, let me get a stick here.
There we go.
I started thinking about it, and I'm like, all right, so if we're doing this, if the arm generates the motion of the wrist, he said, yeah, I've never had tendonitis, so the wrist stays completely limber. I'm going, well, in our case, we still have to have the visual side of things, so you can't have it too loose, but the application of being able to play, that relaxed. I'm going, okay, so even if you start with your wrist flat, like we do, you can still use your arm to get that movement going, and incorporate one element of Moeller that completely changes the way you can flow as just, a modern day rudimental player. I use that all the time now. It's like when you're talking about any kind of accent pattern and playing accents on like the last partial of any rhythm, the idea of using the large muscle to get a little flick, to get the upstroke to happen, it eliminates that little space that people play with when they like squeeze the stick too much.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's like little things like that. It can have it's a subtle thing, but it can have a really big impact on the way you sound or how you groove.
That's right.
And we always look for that stuff. I mean, it's a never ending. I think that's one of the reasons why I still love doing it, is because there's so much I don't know.
I've always learned the phrase, it's the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yep.
Hear, hear.
Well, so you guys both brought up some really great points too. So one of the next questions I have is, everyone starts having their first kind of boom, their first big inspiration. Could you guys talk about who your first inspirations were and why?
Yeah. Mine were my three oldest sisters, because they were playing violin, viola, and cello, and they were fabulous players. They in Los Angeles, they played in studio orchestras, community orchestras, this and that. And of course, I went to everything. And I used to watch them play and perform. And this is when I started noticing, as a child, before them, my parents always had us look at if there was orchestral things on television or anything, they would say, you should check this out and see what you can get out of it. And I'm seeing everybody moving, like, clarinet players, everybody. And I'm going, wow, and I was asking my sisters once, why do they do that? And, what's the purpose? And my oldest sister, Cynthia, said that the music is moving them, and the musicians are doing whatever it takes, to make sure that music comes out. And I said, well, give me an example. So she started playing a piece, and she was really like regimented, like we know the things that we know. And then she played the same piece, loosening up in her body, and it was amazing to hear the difference, because she said, listen to the difference. And, she was giving me a lesson. And so I never, ever forgot about that, about what it took to really make your music speak. And this reminds me of, when starting the pit thing in drum corps, I was responsible for that, getting keyboards and stuff in there, and Tom Hannum and I. But I remember, we started getting a lot of Asian players, young guys and gals. They were really, really talented, but they were kind of tentative, they weren't, come on, open up, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was like, what can I do to get these guys? And then I figured it out. I started bringing up Yo-Yo Ma and Midori, the violin player. And these guys, they were just just as Asian as all of my students, and they weren't hoopty-doing and running around and flipping out and, you know, doing the hully-gully and the jerk and this and that. They were just them. And I'm going, well, you know, these guys are the same way until it's time when them instruments come up. It's another whole world, Jack, you know? And so that was how I was able to influence, you know, the Asian players that I had, and they became really remarkable players once they got past that, because it was something that, and even myself as a young player, I was afraid to loosen up a little bit because I had this perception of the military thing from the parades and this and that. And I went, okay, you know, there's got to be, as I got older, there's got to be a little bit of a happy medium in there. And I thought that came up again, talking about the molar thing, because it was such a much more relaxed approach than just this kind of downstroking, stiff, just use your wrist, and, you know, people learn how to play really clean and together that way, but it limited a lot of the sounds that you could produce as a rudimental drummer until you looked over and checked out the Swiss guys, okay? And those cats were like, whoa, you know, drawing you in and out like this. And I was going, okay, that's the same thing that is like to, you know, when I'm watching a symphony orchestra play. I'm looking at all these older players, you know, to this day right now. And you see that they walk out, you know, and you could see them setting up their stand and their music, and they're all decrepit, and they're opening up their instruments, you know, and they're tuning and plucking, and then all of a sudden the conductor goes, wham, man, and these people are thinking they're just all over the place. The magic is happening because they let the music, they know that their bodies has got to be, well, the music's going to dictate the way your body's going to move. Okay, so that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that we incorporated into our playing in drum corps. And it was at a point where the reason why our styles changed so much in Santa Clara is because it was a big deal for me to let the music dictate what kind of approach we had to the drum, the styles. And that was a lot of it. It wasn't all of it, because we weren't professional enough to be as clean as everybody else, although we were playing some pretty serious stuff. You know, it still didn't have the clarity that the people did with the limited kind of thing. And that was really a challenge growing up with the activity and trying to tell people what I was trying to do and what I was bringing to the table. You know, and they say, well, you know, isn't that taken care of in the pit? I'm going, yeah, but, you know, they're like swoop de jure now to prove their point, and they're like overdoing it, you know. So you know, there's a happy medium that we all found there. And, you know, Glenn jumped on it, you know, too, when we started talking about, well, the music is going to dictate the approach to the instrument, okay? When you're playing at pianissimo, really, really soft, it's hard to play with your hands just gripping hard around the stick and your wrist's the only thing moving. I mean, that's hard. That's like trying to ask the conga player to play that way and still have some nice conga chops going on. It's almost impossible. Okay, so my thing was always about, you know, the limitation that we put on ourselves in terms of rudimental drumming, and still to this day, you know, the Swiss and the Scots and the old guard, you know, all of you guys, you know, the old style there, it's still, you can play clean as anybody and still rock it, just like the symphony orchestras do. So a lot of students, I started asking them, okay, anybody here go to check out a symphony orchestra play? And yeah. Says, isn't it wonderful? Says, have you guys noticed how, you know, when those guys are born, their bodies are all over the place, but the bows are moving in the same, you know, it's clean, you know, talking to the drum guys. And they go, yeah, I did notice that. And so I asked them after that, I go, well, do you think they practice their bow heights? And everybody goes, whoa! I said, no, they don't. So it's the interpretation of the music first. Then we pull the slide rule out a little bit. Johnny, come up just a little bit, you know.
Yep.
You know, watch your touch, don't overplay this guy. And that's a thing that's really important these days, is everybody playing with the same touch. That's something that Glenn and I really promoted. And a lot of people did, they just didn't know what they were really doing, but that's what everybody was doing to get the best sound. And that's one of the things I like what Paul Rennick is doing over at Santa Clara right now. I mean, you can stand in front of that drum line and you can't pick an individual out almost ever, because everybody's playing with the same touch. And, you know, that's a really, really nice, defined, uniform approach. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that, like Glenn said, you know, there's always something to learn, especially in this activity. I've always been wide open about, you know, how it's done, and just comparing our thing, our percussion instruments with everybody else, all the other instruments. Everybody, the solid players all have a uniform approach in their mind of how to do things right professionally. The profession is the secret. That's how the orchestras play so well together. That's how you and your boys in the old guard, man, how you guys can throw down and stretch everything together, and it's just so crisp, and you even know when to put that right foot down. You know how to deal with it all. I mean, there's something incredibly special about that. And so I promote it a lot. You know, I have people listen to, in terms of the drum stuff, the guys over in Europe and the guys over in Pennsylvania, out on the East Coast. Because, you know, it's a little different out in the West Coast. We got nice things going on, but all the old school traditional goods are from out East. We all know that. And, you know, and that's from it coming over on ships, even before that, from over in Europe. You know,
exactly.
So let's keep it real here, everybody, where, you know, what we're doing and where it all comes from and how we want to make this thing progress and develop on. So, I don't know. I think I kind of went off a little bit. I do that sometimes.
That's all good.
But so it's time for Glenn to speak. You got any more questions? Go to Glenn for a while.
Yeah, no, so Glenn, so when you were starting up, who was your first inspiration and why?
Let's see, when I first started, actually I started drumming because of an argument with my dad. My brother, who turns 60 tomorrow, I got to remember to call him. It's a reminder for myself now. He was already playing in the one little drum line, so I would go to rehearsals and hang out. And one day we're getting ready to go, and I'm getting ready to go. My dad's going, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "I'm going to go watch rehearsals." Like, "No, you're not." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, if you want to go, you can join." And I was like, "Well, okay." But by that point, I never held a pair of sticks, but like my brother just showed me, you know, single, double, triple paradiddles. So I got that down right away. And then just started taking lessons from there. Then as time went on, so my brother really was the first one to get me started on it. And then, of course, I had to take the abuse of having the older brother for the next however many years until I finally left the country. We get along well now, but it was definitely the older brother, younger brother scenario back then. I took way too much grief and gave a little bit back when I needed to. But
yes.
But really, I remember, like, I have a specific memory of, like, listening to Rush. What was the tune? Fly By Night. And I would play on the carpet, just playing all the little fills that he had just to play, and started learning how to play singles. So that was the first thing that kind of inspired me to want to play more. And then, again, my brother and all of his friends were really into progressive rock back then. So Genesis, Yes, King Crimson, and Frank Zappa and the like. So there was a whole group of people that were all Chester Thompson fanatics, because he went on the road with Genesis. So, I seen them live for the first time, I think in 1978. And, I was just completely enamored with his playing. And then I found out later how I didn't even realize that he had played with Frank Zappa and Weather Report too. And when I moved to LA, a friend of mine, Marvin Sparks, who was at that time the percussion professor at the University of Houston, was good friends with Chester. And Chester was living out here just about 45 minutes from where I live. And he's like, you know, he introduced me to him at a NAMM show and said, oh, you guys just need to exchange numbers, you know. And I was like, I mean, I'm sitting there like, I'm freaking out because this guy, I idolized this guy. And I ended up doing some lessons with him, actually. He wanted to just do some chop stuff. So I was like, okay. I remember it was really funny, too, when I went up to his house for the first time. I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing in Chester Thompson's house, number one. All my friends back home hated me because they were, you know, complete Genesis fanatics, and I'm hanging out at Chester's house talking with them like it's no big deal, and they're going, yeah. Well, I remember we were sitting one time. It was funny because we were sitting opposite each other, and I was just kind of messing around on a pad for a second. I think I just played some hand-to-hand flams really fast, and I wasn't really like I wasn't doing it to impress him or anything. But he just looks at me and goes, "Was that hand-to-hand flams?" I go, "Yeah," and he just looked at me like, "What the hell's wrong with you?"
Well, who are you?
Really, some kind of aliens? Like, what was that? And subsequently, we're still friends. I had a chance. I did a drum camp a few years ago at Texas State University in Austin. He was the drum set guy that came in. So it still blows me away when I have someone who I respect so much, and he's such a nice person. And, you know, I think the last time we hung out, we were just hanging out in my hotel talking about back problems and how to deal with them.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah, he's just a really an amazing player, great musician. And that was really like, he was kind of, if I was going to focus on like one person who kind of inspired me to just want to play, that was, and I'm not a drum set player, but still just the way he approached things and the kind of, just the vibe. When you watch him play live, man, he's like all the way in, you know, and you pick up on that with the best players. So really, that was like the first one. I mean, then just like going through the drum corps, I mean, Ralph inspired me by teaching me so much about different styles of music. Tom Hannum gave me my first opportunity to teach, you know, and that was really my first kind of really stepping into symphonic music and dealing with Bernstein's First Symphony, which has, you know, 70,000 meter changes in it. And I've told this story before too. My reading wasn't great at that point. Like with Blue Devils, I could learn stuff by rote really, really quick. So my reading chops were just not what they needed to be. So my first year teaching with cadets, we go into the January camp, and he's got the first draft of Jeremiah. So he hands me this page, and I'm looking at it, and it may as well have been in Czechoslovakia, and I had no idea what I was. There was so much detail, and I just looked at him and said, I'm going to need some help with this. I wasn't even going to try and play it off. It's like, sorry, man, but I need help with this one. It'll take me a little while to get it. I'll get it, but I need some help. You know, so just going through that process too, it just opened up the whole world of symphonic music for the first time, really. And then, you know, being back home in Toronto, after I aged out, I started taking some kunga lessons with a guy down in Toronto, and started really loving Afro-Cuban music then. That was the next thing where I was like, I mean, I just remember taking like 2 weeks to be able to get a slap on a drum, and it took a while. My hands hurt, but I finally figured it out, you know, and then going and studying with a great Cuban percussionist down in Toronto and meeting so many of those guys out in LA. One of the great things about Afro-Cuban guys, they love rudimental stuff. All the guys that I've met, like Tiki Pasillas, Ramon Banda, who's passed away a year ago, a really, really good friend of mine, they love when we would get together and just work on some stuff. You know, and then you know, they give me plenty to work on too. I mean, Tiki Pasillas, he was like I think a protege of Giovanni on congas, and it's like, you want to see some chops? Yeah. And that's with all this, no sticks, no rebound. It's like, it's all wrist, you know. So yeah, it's just been constant with, especially living in LA. You just meet people who are from another world. But everyone who I've met has always been really respectful, and you just get a chance to sit and learn from them. And that obviously influences everything that you do. Like when we talk about music dictates technique, the more music you listen to, I mean, your ears are going to guide you no matter what. It's like you're just looking for a particular sound, so you got to figure out how to get that sound.
Right. I love it. When I teach a lot of my students, I always talk about the conversation between your brain, your ears, and your technique. And you have to make sure that that's like an instantaneous conversation if you start to hear something that you don't like, because you have to do all the stuff with the hands and the fingers and the technique. but it's really the ear training that needs to go your entire life. And that's when your brain says, well, I don't like the way I heard that. Let me adapt something small here and make those nuanced changes. But that maturity of the ear is something I've always kind of talked about. It was where, people talk about, old man hands and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm going, you know what? I kind of buy that, but really for me, it's always that ear development. And if I'm starting to really focus on that ear, I can still make those adjustments if I put the time in with my fundamentals. And as long as my fundamentals are solid, I can still play all the hard stuff. If it takes a few minutes of warming up, okay, fine. But really my ear is the one who's done all the training and all the work.
Oh, absolutely. I do the same thing with my private students. Yes. Absolutely. There's and part of it too is I think with students, like you want them to be self-sufficient as soon as possible. So the quicker you can teach them to understand what kind of sound they want to produce, then the brain automatically will adjust the mechanics. If you have a solid foundation when you first teach them just the basics of how to play, then I go straight to the ears almost immediately. It's like, I love even when you do clinics with groups or even just doing like a private lesson with someone for the first time or clinicing groups, and you walk up after they play something and said, what do you guys hear? And they're so used to just getting barked at immediately, you get that complete blank stare like, what do you mean, what did we hear? How are you going to fix anything if you don't know what it sounds like? It's like, listen to your sound. There's times when I'll say, I'll say there was something that went a little askew in that phrase. I'm not telling you what it is. Go find it. And just the power of suggestion, whatever little mishap there might have been, goes away just because you made them elevate their focus and actually listen to everything that they're playing. And then you go back and say, that's how you fix your own stuff. Don't wait for me to tell you. You should be that in tune with what you're doing so it makes your job easier. My job actually a little bit harder because I need to go up another level to find something else that you need to work on in terms of phrasing, touch, musicianship, and sound.
That's some good teaching.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I love that too, because now you've taught them now how to self-diagnose, and they can then move that on to the next group of people if they become teachers.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, I want my students to be better than me.
Yeah, amen. So, next question here. So, you guys have esteemed careers. Do you have a favorite musical memory?
Actually, I got a couple. I took notes. This is something that I wouldn't normally do. Thought about it. As far as drum corps stuff, when I was in Blue Devils in 1984, we were getting our butts kicked by cadets all year long. And finally, we had a show in, I think it was Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and I had made a point to the director of the corps that we sucked actually at a show. I think we were in Montreal at a show, and I saw him walking to the parking lot after a critique, and he was kind of irritated. I'm going, what's up? Oh, they're not giving us credit for this and this. And I said, Mike, do you realize that we suck? Seriously, I said that, and he kind of stopped and looked at me, and I'm going, it was my last year, and I go, I haven't felt anything out of this group since 1982. We had an undefeated season, won Nats, and then all the way through 83, and to that point in 84, it was just kind of like, I'm going, there's been no real performance vibe at all. So that show in Lansdale, I remember having one of those moments where I kind of elevated outside my body, or it seemed like it, because we were playing, at that point, we still had like a concert tune for that year. We were just standing still throwing. And I remember feeling like I kind of just lifted, and I'm just kind of looking around going, wow, we're completely on fire right now. It had that weird, I really wonder what that is, how to get in a zone like that. Because really, at that point, your brain just completely takes over in your soul, and you're just going. But it felt like I left my body for a little bit, and like legitimately left it. And it was funny because as soon as we got off from that show, director came right up to me and looked at me. I said, yes, that's what we need to do. Like immediately, I go, that's the first time in 2 years that we've done that. So I was like,
there you go.
There's that one, 88 Santa Clara. At the end of the year, all year, that was a really young group, and we started out horribly. It was kind of comical, but it was like, all right, we got some work to do, so let's just go do it.
And we won at the end of the season.
We won drums that year. Yeah, we didn't win corps, but we won drums. And it was funny because one of the big things was we were trying to get them, the entire corps, to really emote that last push of the show. And we're in a rehearsal in Kansas. This is one of those moments I remember as a teacher, because I'd never done this before, but I kind of lost my mind in the middle of an ensemble rehearsal on the field. And we're in the middle of playing this push, and I just cut the whole corps and started flipping out on people. It's like, I think I said something like, how can you not feel something while you're playing this? It's like, you guys have no soul. Let's go. I said, get back there. I probably dropped a couple fresh words in there at some point, and said, get back and do that again. And they went back, and all of a sudden it was like, it was just one of those moments where they completely unleashed in a rehearsal. And I'm standing there, and I turned around, and like, there's all the staff is on the sideline, just like people throwing shoes in the air. And so I was like, oh, okay. So when we got to finals, that was like one of the greater moments I've had as a teacher, was that when we got to finals and they got to the end of the show, I waited, and sure enough, man, the crowd was up immediately before even the climax of that hit had even gotten close. So I'm going, yes. I think you can actually hear me screaming on the album, like, yeah, you did it, or something stupid like that, you know. But that one. And then Crown 2013. It's just the best horn line I've ever been around, and the crowd response for that was ridiculous. And working with that percussion section, because they were under a lot of heat, under a lot of fire that year, and I had to actually take them aside a couple times and say, I went in for the last 2 weeks and said, ignore everybody, ignore the noise. We're going to do exactly what we need to do the next 2 weeks. So just, all right, I just trust me. We're going to get as much done as we can. You guys are going to do well. Just ignore anyone that says anything to you. I don't care who it is. If it's inside your organization or out, I got your back. You know. And actually, at semifinals, they played their best show of the year by a long shot. Because I think Glenn Fugit was on the field and was like, "Where'd this come from?"
Mm-hmm.
But that corps and being around that brass section was something I've never experienced. To actually be with them for a good part of the season and just hear that was like, you know, just crazy. So those are probably the three big drum corps moments that come to mind.
That's awesome.
I got one. I got a couple, but I'll tell you about one. And again, as it relates to the drum corps thing, because I've had, many experiences in music, but this was in 1981, and Santa Clara, of course. And the whole thing was, it was DCI championships. It was time to have our rehearsal, the last rehearsal before we went to finals. So that year, Gail Royer, there was so many people and parents that used to come around at nationals that it would distract the kids a lot, and he hated it. So he set up this plan. We used to go off and have our secret spots where we would rehearse. But this one was so secret-y that he didn't tell anybody about it except for the drivers and all the parents and everybody. He was saying, just follow the bus, this bus, and it'll lead you to it. Well, he had set this whole thing up. This bus led them to the other side of the universe. Meanwhile, we're in a spot, and this is the first time I ever experienced this, at our own spot at the school where nobody was around, and like not a parent, not a spectator. It was just the corps, and it was absolutely amazing what we got done. So that year we were doing Benjamin Britten's Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, really famous piece. And as you guys well know, towards the end, there's this 2 against 3 section, okay? And I was standing with some staff members, and the magic started happening when we got to that piece. Everything was great, but when we got there, something different was going on. Like the spirit of music and performance kind of hit the whole corps at once. And they, at the end, after it was over, they tried to play it off like, yeah, we're always like that. But I happen to know what happened is they got tapped into another power that they never experienced as a full group. Yeah. So they got to this 2 against 3 section, and it was like all of a sudden everything turned into this big blur, like a storm, a music storm came in. to me. And I was looking at Kurt Moore and all the rest of the drum staff. And are you guys getting what I'm getting? And they were like, everybody was in awe. And the Corps was so locked into this 2 against 3 thing. And I remember looking at the color guard and what they were doing. I never really paid any attention to them, but I was looking at the feet. We were 2 against 3. And everywhere I looked, everything was just in sync. And it was nuts. And they got to the end of, you know, that whole big thing at the end. And we were just like screaming and yelling, and we stopped. I stopped the Corps instead of finishing the closer. And I said, you guys, that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. And if you're able to come close to doing that at your performance, you're going to have a lot to say to the audience. And they were like, no problem. I mean, you know, we had this inside of us all along, you know, we were just waiting until finals. And I'm like, sure, you know. And, you know, so of course I'm talking to different players and performers, you know, color guard, brass, drums. And, okay, so tell me how you felt about it. They said, there was something that went on out there. I said, now you know what it's like to be a professional. How they turn audiences on, okay? They're turned on too. You were so turned on that you brought something special to your audience. So it's not really, it's always the performers first. They get the audience, their audience going, and then the feedback starts. But the performers have to do something first. They got to get their, you know, got to get people charged up. And that's exactly what happened, just talking to individuals. They said it was like magic. And I'm going, you know, it was magic. And all you have to remember is what you remember right now is you weren't distracted, okay? You wanted to do so well. You had been trained to. The magic happened with everybody, and everybody got it. And so they came close to doing that in the final performance. But that for me was like, just to see all of these kids, and they were kids, I mean, you know, 14, 15 to 21. And to see this whole clique of 100 and however many people, 40 people click like that, it reminded me of some of the times when I went to see symphony orchestra performances and how those kind of things would move me with professional players, man. And, you know, like brass, you know, they got like 8 brass players and they sound like a whole drum corps. You know, they're so powerful, you know, and just the acoustics in these places that were made strictly for orchestras and stuff like that. I mean, it's all magic. And so it reminded me of that. And I was so tickled because here's all these people that weren't professionals. They were semi-professional. And they didn't even know that, but they finally got it, and we all got it together. And, you know, I was satisfied with you know, up to that point. If I never even saw anything else for the rest of the season, and of course there was one more show left, finals, then I would have been satisfied. Of course, they went out and did pretty close to the same thing throughout the whole show, and they wound up winning on top of it. But that was really a special thing. I think it had to do with Gail getting everybody out and the kids having this whole thing where nobody was around. Because, you know, when you're practicing in schools, it's somebody's around in the stands. There was nobody except for the staff. The parents were all following the bus someplace else. Nobody knew where we were. You know, some people tried to follow Gail, and I remember getting out of the car and him getting out of his thing and telling some parents, they're going, where are you going? And he got out and he started yelling at them, I don't have time for you to answer your questions. You know, he just really didn't want anybody to know where they were going. But it had a lot to them being by themselves and them experiencing what it was like playing for themselves, okay? So yeah, the magic of music, that's what I call that. And what a moment. Now, you know, and I've had a lot of them, but they all had to do with music. You know what I mean?
And I love how you're bringing this up because it's so selfless. I mean, you're talking about your greatest musical memory or your greatest moment, and it's these kids and their success. And like that's powerful, because then it's showing the power that, look, I'm able to provide X, Y, and Z. I can provide this, but it's really a gift for you to have and take your craft to the next level. And I think that's where a lot, that's what elevates the great teachers from the mediocre teachers. The great teachers maybe have, or the mediocre teachers have good concepts, they have good things to say, but is it really about them, or is it about the students? Is it about the product overall, or is it about a reputation? And I think that's what I love about both of your stories, is you're so giving with your time and your talent. And right there was just like your discussions of what your greatest musical memories, and it was how you were instructing and being around other students. So I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm not one to like to shed tears in front of a lot of people, but man, were they flowing. And they were flowing out of everybody, the whole staff, the kids in the corps. I mean, it was this thing that we all experienced together. And this is with kids. And I was like, see, this can work on any level. And it truly did have to do with the teaching, and then the talent by the end of the season, what they brought to the table and what they learned from everybody, plus just the magic of themselves. They figured out something as an ensemble, how much power that they really had by just doing their craft.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about that. What a great idea to have a completely closed rehearsal, because what it created was the ability for them to focus on a much higher level. Really, there's, like you're saying, there's no distractions. So for me, when you're in a zone, that basically means having a clear and present mind, where nothing distracts you from the task that you're doing as you're doing it in real time. So when a moment happens like that, it's like it was set up perfectly by you guys and by Gail to take people in another direction. So there's nothing to distract anyone, and at that point in the season, what you're supposed to be doing. So to have that little bit of time to say there's nothing except me focusing on what I'm doing. All of a sudden, when it clicks, it's such an amazing thing, man. It
was, and there was no trying. It was doing, and that was always one of my things I would say to the kids all the time. I don't want to hear about trying. Don't give me the I'm trying, because man, I will nail you if you try to lay that on me. Oh, in that case, I'll just kick on back, and you just keep trying. And in fact, I'm done with you for the season. No, it doesn't work that way. It's like they knew what was going on, and this thing clicked, and we were all part of this major thing about music, about performance. And again, it was about the marching, as well as the drumming, as well as the brass playing, as well as the color guard and the rifles and the spinning. It was just this whole conglomerate and this package of goodness. And regardless of where those kind of things come from, there's nothing like it. You know what I mean? And especially if there's kids.
Oh yeah. I just flashed on '89. We were on the road somewhere, and I had a chance to work with the pit, because there was no pit instructor around at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We're working on the ballad, and this is like, I'm not a keyboard player, but from learning from Ralph
You're a
about
musician.
and listen, and just listening. We're working on the ballad, and we got into a discussion about what the music actually meant. And that was one of those moments that, again, as a teacher, they played a run through of the ballad, and they stopped, and they just froze and kind of looked at each other like, what just happened? They're all real emotional about, and we're in the middle of a field somewhere, a couple hundred yards away from the school, and it was one of those moments where it's like, oh, okay, I had something good to say, and it worked. And they all know it. I don't have to say anything else. They all felt it. When you get those moments, that is the best as a teacher, to be able to get that.
Plus, it was a ballad too, Glenn.
Yeah.
And, we all know that, when the name ballad comes up, it's got to move you in a different way than anything else does.
Right.
What I mean? So I totally get that. I understand that. I remember you telling me about that on several occasions.
Yeah, it was a trip.
Just got it. They
Yeah.
just got it, you know.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, there's no denying when you're like almost in tears just listening to kids play on a bunch of keyboard instruments, playing some Phantom of the Opera stuff in the middle of a field in
On the
Nebraska.
football field. What a thunk. You
Yeah,
know?
really.
All right. Well, this is good. This moves us into a couple of the other questions here. I'm going to try to combine a couple of them real quick.
Okay.
So, kids, music education, technology. There's been a ton of development over the last 50 years, of course, in drum corps. But how do you feel that the marching arts sets up students to kind of tackle the world?
I'll jump in on that. This is something that I say all the time to the kids every year. I'm going, you guys, whether you decide to pursue your career in music or not, what you're learning here is something that you can take to any job that you decide, or any profession you decide you want to do once you get out of this and you're looking for work or anything. It's like the work ethic is the thing that you can apply to anything that you're doing from now on in the future that you've learned here. So that's really the strongest one for me, is the actual work ethic that the kids learn, that they can apply to just about anything in life, pretty much.
Yeah, really. I mean, for me, it's the same. Just to piggyback off of what Ralph's saying, I've always thought that we're just teaching life skills through music. So there's so many things, especially right now, about perseverance, dealing with adversity, knowing how to, trusting yourself to go through a process from beginning to end, and like put your head down and go. And when you're done, you can look up and see what you accomplished. I mean, the whole drum corps, when you go on a tour like that, I mean, you're dealing with so many personalities. You're cramped in cramped quarters all the time. You have to be flexible. You have to know how to deal with different situations. And there's so many students that I've taught that come back and say, man, the stuff that you guys gave us lasted me a lifetime. And an example actually lately, the drum major for Santa Clara in 1988, Ken Serra. He's a doctor in Arizona dealing with all this craziness right now.
Yes.
And I just happened to mention to him online, going, man, it's amazing what you're doing. He's like, we need to have a conversation sometime. He said, he goes, I need to tell you what kind of influence you had on me as an 18-year-old kid that's helping me get through this right now. And I was like really taken back on, okay, I just remember like a really quiet drum major. And obviously he was around us a lot for doing ensemble rehearsals, but I was like, wow, that's really cool to know. And I'm happy that something like that transferred into a situation like this.
That's amazing, isn't it?
He's in the middle of dealing with this virus front and center.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, really teaching life skills. There's so much that you can take from that, that you learn about, especially its perseverance, dealing with adversity. And I actually said, like with Pacific Crest, we've had these weekly meetings. And when this first started, I told everyone that was on, I was like, this is when you have to actually use the training that you've been given. Because you're going to be, you don't know what you're dealing with right now. No one knows what we're dealing with right now, for the most part. It's like you got to navigate your way through this, and you have to put your head down, be smart, and go and just stick with it until things get at least back to some kind of normalcy or whatever it is, but you can't give in. It's like anything else. You can't sit back and go, well, I'm done now. I can't do anything. It's like, no, absolutely not. We would not allow you to do that if we're on the field right now. And I'm sure as hell not going to let it happen, in the middle of doing this now too. So it's like, there's plenty of lessons that can be applied right now.
And I love that, because that's something also too. I mean, a lot of folks are asking, what do music educators do now? What do students do right now? And I think that idea of perseverance and putting your head down and like barrel through it, keep practicing, keep reading, keep doing all those fundamental things. Yeah. And you have time to do it. And honestly, you have more time to practice now than you've ever had.
Yeah, it's difficult. The thing about that too is, for a majority of students or a majority of humans, you have that really tiny percentage of people that are just self-motivated no matter what. They've either been in that environment or their brain is wired to be doing something all the time. Then there's the rest of us. who sometimes need some motivation, or just a friend to come with you, you know.
Smack upside the head.
Yeah, yeah. I lost my train of thought here. Oh yeah, actually, you know what? It's interesting you bring up that point, because I've had a lot of meetings over the last couple of weeks, and it's about that time when schools are saying, all right, we're starting out online again, marching band season's canceled. And I had a meeting with a couple band directors, local guys, and they're like, well, maybe we can do an indoor winds thing, and then, and I was talking to them going, so let me ask you guys a question, like, is it really necessary to do anything competitive this year? It's like, think outside the box. It's like, if you can't really have in-person rehearsals, or it has to be in small groups, then you have to adapt to what's given to you. And there's plenty of things that you can do, you know, whether it is just teaching fundamentals, doing music appreciation, teaching kids more about theory that you normally wouldn't do. I mean, you have to really think of every possible resource you can come up with to keep your students engaged. And you just got to flush the competitive thing for right now, because it just doesn't matter. It's
Right.
not something that's going to happen. So let that go and move on to something else. And that takes people out of their comfort zone. But I would suspect that if you're a musician or you want to be in the arts, there's some kind of creative motivation that you have. So use it now. Now's the time to think. And you know what? I think showing vulnerability to your students too, and saying, you know what, I'm not sure maybe what we should be doing. We're going to try some things, and try and get them engaged in the process of figuring out what to do can help out a lot too. Exactly. You know, then at least you have some kind of communication going, because we can't be in the same room for the most part. You know, percussionists can get away with being in the same room. I've had discussions. I just had a meeting with the UCLA people about what's possible to do while everything's sorting itself out. And also I'm a part of there's an Instagram account, Marching Vlogs, that put together a drumline of from RCC, Pulse, and Broken City to raise money for a food bank up in the area. Mm-hmm. And we figured out how to do it safely. We had a rehearsal yesterday in person. You know, everyone had a mask, a face shield. We had them at least, you know, right around 6 feet apart. Everyone's facing the same direction, so there's no one really facing each other at any point. You know, so it's learning how to do that in a safe environment. And still, you know what? It's annoying wearing all that stuff, but yeah. You know what? It's a small price to play for the joy that I saw yesterday about these guys getting together and just throwing down. Yeah. You know, and everyone's together. Yeah, just being together and playing. And you know, even though these guys come from 3 different groups, the technique is really not that different. I mean, I've taught people to teach them. So right. There's like variations of the way we teach anyway. And there was a couple times yesterday they started playing some stuff. I was like, yeah, okay. That sounds pretty good right now. So we have a few weeks before we're doing that, but it's just, you know, there's no right or wrong way. You really got to kind of, you know, jump in the deep end full on. And I learned that from my good friend here. You know, he threw me in the deep end a bunch of times when it was time to do ensemble and I'd never done it, or just being on the road by myself. And it's like, go figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. So, yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
No, well, I think you should go ahead, because you were getting ready to talk about another topic, perhaps, weren't you?
Well, yeah, but finish up your thought first and we'll hop to the next one.
Okay. What was it? I was going to tell you about some of the things that we did as teachers to help influence the kids. We used to have in Santa Clara 2 things. We used to have these things called cultural concerts, which it's kind of a wine and cheese thing for the public. But the kids would do everything except for the drum corps stuff. So if you were a singer, a violin player, or a piano, or you wanted to put a quartet together, brass, whatever, we'd allow that to happen and play for the community. And then we do the drum corps thing at the end to finish it off. That was one thing. The other thing was we used to have music listening parties that Fred Sanford and I started. It was just a reason to get together and have feed some of the younger guys a beer or two, you know, as long as it was cool. But between Fred and I, we had every kind of piece of music that you could think of. okay? And we used to have these listening sessions with the guys. We'd put stuff on and say, here's the idea behind this. We want to play some fresh stuff for you. And the reason why we're doing it is not to force you to like anything, but to learn how to appreciate what's going on out in the world besides of your own private thing. So, I mean, we're bringing out male synagogue choirs, music from Africa, Bulgaria, you know, singers, you know, everything that you can imagine. And they're going, man, this is really cool. And I'm going, well, I mean, this is all of, in case you're wondering, these are all of my influences, you know, we used to call it back in the day, dropping the needle, because, you know, there was just record players in, you know what I mean? And when we were doing that, that's when we first started doing Santa Clara, we were dropping the needle. Later on, Murray and Jim Casella, you know, because this is what we did with them when they took over the line. That's when CDs were out there. So Murray and those guys made CDs for everybody, you know, like A, B, C, D, E. And so it was like hundreds of them, you know, and
I still have a bunch of those.
Yeah, and we'd listen to all those, yellow, blue, green, remember that?
Exactly,
yeah. and we'd listen, and they'd all be different styles and approaches to music. And it was something besides us just dropping the needle and saying, well, you can go out and buy this. Well, they actually, you know, Murray and those guys had CDs of all of this intricate and weird. I mean, we went way out and way in, you know. And they go, wow, man, how could you get anything out of this? I'm going, well, I'm not a big fan of country and music western, but, you know, country and western music. But I know, like, what? But that was great.
That was perfect.
I know, but there are some pieces after taking some time out and listening to it that I really, really like. And I couldn't tell a lot of people that, because the hood that I grew up in, I ain't telling none of my homies that I'm listening to Conway Twitty.
That's hilarious. I knew you were going to say that name. I was going, watch, he's going to say Conway.
It's like, I mean, you know, but I picked up a couple of albums, and, you know, once I started doing that, you know, there's all the gamelan music and this and that. We just turned everybody on to everything percussive wise, and of course, you know, different vocal things and everything, but certainly percussion. And then I started telling people to write little pieces of music, because we rehearsed Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, because in California, we could rehearse because we had the weather, you know, during the winter time, okay? So I started giving out assignments, you know, homework assignments. I want everybody in here to write something. I don't care if it's 2 bars, 4 bars, a little piece, anything you want, any style, and then we'll come and learn it and play it here instead of, you know, doing some exercises, you know. Well, we got time to do this. So check this out. People started bringing little goodies in. So Murray comes up and he has this like 3 pieces of score paper, and it's just loaded with crap and these weird time signatures and stuff on it. And he goes, well, you know, I got this piece here, you know, and I'm going, Jesus Christ, you know, and I got saved because somebody came up and said, Gil Royer wants you in the office. So I came to Murray, I said, you teach it. So I go in the office, I'm having like a half an hour, 45 minutes. All of a sudden I'm walking outside and I'm hearing some stuff that I've never heard before in my life.
Oh, yeah, I remember that night.
And it was fabulous. And I come back and it's Murray stuff. And I'm sitting there looking at the score and I think, was it Electric Wheelchair, one of those first things that he did?
Martian Mambo.
Martian Mambo.
It was like chicken scratch on a piece of paper. So I was looking at it going, what is this?
Yeah, it looked like Jim Prime's music, you know, like when you do a quarter note, you know, you fill in the, you know, the half note, you know, and Jim Prime is like one of the greatest brass arrangers ever for drum corps, but that's the way his music is. And the same too with Murray's stuff. I'm like, oh, I see you filled in some quarter notes here, but it was like hard to read, but it was the coolest stuff. So I started implementing it into our exercises and the stuff that he wrote, because it's just genius. I mean, I could never think of this. We don't think like him. His stuff.
Yeah, he's a whole nother level. I remember walking out there too when they were playing that. We both walked out and it was like just kind of looking at each other and going, you know what? I have no idea where one is, but I'm still bouncing.
But the kids
Like,
all
this
understood.
I've never heard anything like this before in my life.
He taught them how to understand it.
Yeah.
Everything. And they were all grinning and just playing away. And, you know, and I'm like, what just happened when I was out of here? And that's when we figured out Murray.
Yeah.
That was it. Because that was the first, he hadn't even written anything yet. I knew him when I used to teach his high school down in Southern California. And so that's how I got him and a bunch of guys from his school, you know. And so you give people a chance to write and they bring this stuff to you and you start going, you know. And, you know, I just thinking about Murray, his stuff was so, I mean, everything that he's written now ever since then is just so in another world. I mean, Glenn and I could never think of the stuff that,
it's still relevant. I mean, this group that I'm working with, when I was talking about, we're playing like 4 of Murray's exercises. It's like they don't age. They're still the cool. He's the one that basically changed everything about technique programs, the whole lot scene, because everyone was playing bucks back then, and that was pretty much it. You know, and once he started that changed the landscape completely, where, I mean, a lot of the show is out in the lot now, seeing what these drum lines come up with. You know, and it's amazing that his approach and his writing style still is relevant today, because all these great players from RCC, Pulse, and Broken City, they chose what they wanted to play. And there's 4 his pieces out of like the 10 or 15 that they chose.
You see? Yeah. And like, his stuff is like, man, I was so glad that I opened up that door for these guys. And quite frankly, I was blown away. I couldn't wait to tell everybody, because, you know, a lot of people came around Santa Clara all the time to watch them warm up. I mean, tons. And so people are coming up and tapping me on my shoulder. Oh, man, that is fantastic, Rob. You and your stuff. And I'm going, hold it. I got to make an announcement. By the way, everybody out here, you see that guy over there? Murray, raise your hand. He's the guy. You know, I couldn't wait to tell everybody that he was the guy.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way that I'm going to take 1 ounce of credit for any of this, because people are going, oh, Ralph, man, that's some of the hottest stuff you've ever done. I'm going, I can't, there's no way I could ever take credit for this. It's that guy, you know, and I just couldn't wait to do it. And so he started writing more, and his stuff, that Flash Gordon thing, Gordon Henderson.
Flash Gordon Henderson.
This stuff is so, how could you think of anything like this stuff? It's just genius. So, yeah.
Easy Boofs, Flamus. It's like, I still use these. I mean, the kids that I teach, they want to learn them.
Yeah. But it's funny that you bring this up, because Scott Jameson, I think, was at Capital Regiment. And
right. when I was teaching.
Yep. So Scott Jameson came to the Old Guard, I don't know, 2007, somewhere right around there, I think. And so when he came to the Old Guard, I was never a Moeller guy at all. Like, I never was. Everything was very mechanical when I was starting to play. Even in fife and drum style, it was still very kind of rigid. Sure. And I remember Scott coming to the Old Guard, and we just heard him play his double stroke roll, and we were at just the power he had and how smooth it was. And he goes, oh yeah, well, I was working on basic strokes, this Murray Gussick exercise. And I went, so I remember the first Deep River muster I went to after learning this back in Connecticut, and I started playing just basic strokes with some of the guys, and it was timeless. It was this just fundamental accent and then controlled tap rebounds and then inverted motion and then adding flams with Flamus and Cheesy Poofs and I mean Schlitz and Giggles and all these other things he's got. I mean, that changed the Old Guard's approach to drumming. And when we were talking about it, I said, I mean, from me to you, I just have to say thank you for what you've even given back to the traditional community with your writing. I mean, it actually has brought such a natural flow of motion that I actually think a lot of drummers probably played that way, but we started getting so technical in our ways that you almost kind of allowed us to reopen ourselves on what could be coming out of the drum.
Well, he did that. Let me tell you, and it was just magic. You know, he's just like a magical guy, and I was so happy to tell everybody about his stuff and what it did for me. Even I was so blown back because, you know, Vanguard was about the name, the word Vanguard, which means leader.
Yeah.
Okay, and I really took that to heart when I took over the gig, you know, with Fred and everything. It's like, I got to come up with some fresh stuff all the time here. Okay. And then Murray comes along, and there was this little thing, this little assignment I gave him, and he comes up with this stuff. It was like 1,000 times more fresher than anything I could ever come up with. And I was so stoked. You are the guy, you know? I mean, it was just case closed. So yeah, that's right up there with one of the things that, a musical memory too, that blew me away. You know,
Awesome.
Now that I think about it, it was that Murray moment.
Yep. Yep, that was hilarious.
So I'm going to round the bend a little bit because I definitely would love to revisit some of these topics. And I think probably we could be here for 5 hours. We'd have to take a bathroom break, get a couple drinks, and then come back. So
I just wanted to say this before you go. Scott Jameson, a lot of that stuff that, because he learned most of that stuff from Mississippi. You know what I mean?
Brian Stevens.
Brian Stevens. Yeah, he was and Brian and I were both doing Capital Regiment together, and I did all the writing, and he did all the exercises program. He was at Stephen F. Austin. And, you know, you got couple of guys from Stephen F. Austin, from that Houston area. Who was your last guy that you got from there?
We got a David Vernon that was from there.
Yes.
And Danny Wells is another one.
Danny Wells, I remember Danny.
Danny, good old, and he was another one. And those guys could play.
Yeah.
I mean, they had chops.
Yeah.
You know?
It's crazy. And we talk about that with the auditions and everything else, is like, you know, keep always practicing, but figure out who has gotten the gig and figure out how they got it. And, you know, when you talk about Brian Stevens, you talk about John Wooten, you talk about, you know, Murray's exercises, your teaching. I mean, you're putting all of that experience, and you try to be a sponge, just like you were saying with dropping the needle. I mean, you're just trying to get people to be a sponge.
Yeah. So yeah, that's some good teaching, man. And I give props to all the people that are doing some good teaching everywhere, especially in the drum community.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many people that are just great teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just unbelievable, man. I'm just stoked about it. You know, it means the world to me.
I love it.
Yeah, me too.
So a couple last questions then. So you've obviously have seasons, there are ups and downs. Do you have any kind of quotes or books or things like that you think of whenever you kind of feel like you're in a stuck situation, or you're in maybe a down season?
Yes.
Yes.
There's three books.
Control.
Oh, not even that. Do you want like draft books or?
No, so anything. I mean, if it's drumming, that's fine. I mean, if it's philosophy, whatever.
Yeah, stick control is obviously the go-to. That's still the best technique book there is, really. For me, there's two books in terms of teaching philosophy. The Talent Code and the Culture Code. They're both by a guy named Daniel Coyle.
Yeah.
Talent Code, he basically traveled around the world looking for what was considered hotbeds of talent. So he went to the Dominican Republic to check out why their Little League team was so, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, showed up and was doing really well every year. He went to South Korea to find out why all of a sudden all these amazing female golfers were coming out of South Korea, and went to different music schools and stuff. And he just found like this correlation between something ignited a passion in an area that people wanted to learn, and then combine that with master coaching and the other concepts that go along with that, and you have all of a sudden, you know, an explosion of talent. And it also gets into the neuroscience of practicing. It actually explains how the brain functions and why it's important to be meticulous, and why the best of the best operate the way they do. And and it gets into the idea of there's a substance called myelin that wraps itself around nerve endings, I guess, from your brain to whatever to whatever part of your body it's sending a message to. And it talks about how if you are meticulous in what you're doing, your brain is memorizing motions. It doesn't matter if you're throwing a ball, playing a drum. It's all that's a process that you have to go through. And if you do that, you allow yourself, when you get into like performance mode, everything is automatic. You don't have to be thinking about anything. You've already, the message gets sent clear from your brain to your hands in drumming's case. And they kind of equate it to, if you're practicing meticulously, they kind of equate it to internet bandwidth.
Right.
Having a great connection or having a connection that's glitching out all the time. That's really great. And then as far as teachers too, or just if you're a manager, or someone who deals with a lot of people, the culture code, it's the same concept where he goes into a lot of, why the best corporations are the way they are and the way the CEOs, there's lots of things about, like I use the term vulnerability. People that are more open and not trying to be a dictator end up being the best managers and get the most out of their people because they're actually vested in making people better. And it's not about me being in power. It's about, trying to create an environment where we all feel really, really good about what's going on. And part of that is actually, I think I said it when we were talking about what band directors can do. You can show vulnerability to your students and say, you know what, I don't have all the answers right now. I need help. And you'd be amazed how people will love that and love you for that and come back and say, all right, let's work on this together. So there's those two. And then as far as like pure performance, an actor prepares. It's supposed to be one of the acting Bibles. It's by Konstantin Stanislavski. And actually a student sent that to me, I think about 25 years ago, just out of the blue. He said, here, man, read this book. This is what you do. And I was like, well, what do you mean? So I started reading through and going, that's why that works. I started figuring out what it was that I was like. I mean, for me, it was all just experiencing things and trying out ways based on, you have a problem, you've got to come up with a solution.
Oops. Sorry. My bad.
But it goes into how to create a character and how to be when you talk about flipping a switch in performance, it goes through an actual process of how to get to that point where you can do that. So there's parts of it that are a little bit mechanical, but it gets you in a groove. So, it was an obvious parallel between acting and still being a musician. You still have to, you have to emote, you have to perform, you have to connect with human beings. So there's a lot in there that was really useful. But those are the three kind of go-tos in terms of, I get a little bit stuck to, I'll go back and read some of that. And it's like, okay, that's right.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's a leadership podcast I listen to, but Craig Rochelle does a leadership podcast, and he always talks about people would much more rather follow a leader who is real than a leader who is right. And that to me was always kind of hitting home because, I mean, as we all have kind of acknowledged, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And I mean, it's kind of easy to say it, but I mean, in reality, when you practice that, the act of, being selfless and saying, look, I don't have all the answers right now. I need to go do some homework. And I think that always speaks a lot to students who, can sniff that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, the kids always know. The students always know. I mean, I just flashed on really quick. In '88, we were on the road, and I had not been getting much sleep, and we were in Kansas somewhere. We had a afternoon block of percussion on the field, and I was like exhausted. I thought I was going to actually like fall over and pass out. And I told the group right before, I just said, hey, you guys, I need your help. I have no energy. I'm done. It's like, so this is going to have to be all on you for this rehearsal. And by the time we got done with that block, I was like doing backflips. These guys put out so much energy that it completely brought me back to life. And I was like, thanks. You guys just supplied me with the energy instead of, there's always give and take when you teach anyway, but I just said, I have nothing for you today right now.
Right.
I just got nothing, and they brought me right back up. It's like, there you go.
That's awesome. Ralph, do you have any books or quotes or anything like that keeps you inspired or brings you out from being stuck?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the names of them. I like some of the French snare drum books, and one that was really obscure. I remember doing. It was Couturier, which is a name that maybe you might want to write down and check out. But for my senior recital in college, I used some of his stuff, and he had these snare drum and piano, with piano accompaniment, which I thought was very attractive because that was real different, and and of course it was French, so of course it's different. But the thing that I remember about it the most is trying to get a piano player that would play this stuff. During recital time in college, everybody went to the piano players, and they paid the money, and they said, well, let me look at the score. And they'd look at the thing and go, good God. And I finally found this one, a woman to play, and it was so hard for her. And the snare stuff was hard too. It's just not the same mental, the training that you get and how to look at music and phrase and stuff. It was the French guys are completely different. So Couturier is one, and I'm trying to remember the other one, which was real important for me because the stuff was so fresh. And let's see, God, what was his name? He's a French guy. He puts out Tiffany books as well as snare drum books. I might have to let you know later because it's important. It's something that you need to have in your library that I haven't taken out in a while. But I actually use some of the licks in this book for some ideas for Santa Clara for writing because it was so different. So it made me take a closer look at the French composers. I would have never, even thought twice about French drum books, snare drum books. But man, they got some stuff, and I wish I remember this name, but it's going to come to me probably after we end this thing because it's like my favorite right now. And I was over there looking, trying to find the damn book, and I couldn't find it. It ticked me off. I was like, damn it. And my brain is just locked up right now, and it won't open up. But I got to let you know about this because this is a book that you'd be very interested in playing. I know that because I've watched you playing almost daily. Those things you do on Facebook, man. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. It reminded me of, if we're talking about Scott and those guys, the way they drum the way you drum, which is like it's not like you're thinking through the head, although that would be a good way to explain a lot of that, to somebody off to the side. But man, talking about not being afraid to hit the drum. Holy
hell. It's interesting because when I was young, I was just taken all over the place. And so mid 80s is when I got my start. And I would just go to these Italian festivals in Hoboken, New Jersey with a guy in
all places.
Yeah, and his guy Al Duke Terreri was the guy with the Company of Fifers and Drummers, and he's kind of like basically one of the godfathers for this fife and drum community. And Duke was in the Newark, New Jersey Symphony. He was also a kit player in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, man.
But he taught the St. Lucy's Drum Corps, who apparently was the arch rivals, I think, to Blessed Sacrament back in the day.
They were back in those days. You better believe it.
So yeah, and that was so. I mean, Nick would take me down to these events, and Duke was there playing, and I would play next to Eric Perilou, and and then. Bobby Thompson would be, around, and Les Parks. So, I mean, like I got introduced to these guys when I was, 11, 12 years old.
That's heavy duty.
They were just like, hey, copy him. And Nick would never talk really about the details of the technique. He would just make me try to be a chameleon with these other drummers. And so I was not a good reader. I didn't really do anything else musically than play snare drum. But it was just my ear training and learning everything by rote was how it all was. So when it came to like taking the Swiss style stuff and messing around with a little bit of the pipe band stuff, it is all this ear training we were talking about earlier. So, I mean, I love the fact that we could sit here and talk about, the artistic side of it, the scientific side of it, but then it's like, it's got to be from the heart. There has to be a part of it that's coming from the heart.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were talking about Kilpatrick. He's another example that, he's not afraid to hit the drum. And, the Scottish style is not they don't play with a lot of force, but he's not afraid when it's time. He's one of the guys in the Scottish community that is not afraid to hit the drum, and I really appreciate it. I learned quite a lot from him. So it was kind of neat hearing his name when we first started out. You said you did a podcast with him not too long ago, right?
Yeah, actually we did a recording this morning. So it was great. Yeah.
Actually, I met him for the first time at the NAMM show back in January.
He's hilarious too, man.
Great guy.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, and he says, and it's the same thing. He talks about his students. He's so proud of his students and what they've been able to do with their championships. And it's like, then I mean, you're dealing with quality human beings, and I think that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
By the way, are you familiar with any of these books? Can you see? I don't know if you can read any.
Oh yeah, I could see them. You got the burger books.
Yeah.
Yep, book 1, 2, and 3.
These babies. Woo! Glenn, I don't know if I've ever turned it on to you, but, if I show you what's inside, then you'll know that, from the way the stuff is written, the right hand and left hand up.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Yeah. There's some stuff.
Oh, it's been interesting. I mean, just to go on a little side story, I was doing this work with Top Secret Drum Corps about 15 years ago, and that was my first introduction to this Basel style of drumming. And I would go over to Switzerland to teach and write with these guys, and I had no clue about the traditional side of the stuff that they were doing. And they said, "Great, you keep coming in the summer. You need to come for this Fastnacht, this carnival." And I said, "Oh, yeah, okay, fine." About 8 years later, I made my first one. And then, honestly, I've been going every year for the last almost 10 years now. And
we got to go, Glenn. We got to go together.
Yeah.
It's addictive. It's addictive. It's a beautiful city. It's an old Lenten carnival. You learn, 2 or 3 marches, and it's amazing. It's an amazing event.
I've been there. In fact, I got a drum made by one of the Basel Tom was over there,
Nice.
Made the drum for me, and it's got the seal. It's it's got a nice crest on it and everything. You know how those guys are with their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the 80s, I had a chance to go over there because I was doing premier percussion at the time, and so that they were bringing me over, and I experienced all that stuff. And I remember they were taking me to all the fraternities, which are like on every corner in Basel. Mm-hmm. Drum fraternities, Glenn. And they had these secret places, man, where they put their drums in. They had these drum tuner crank things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You put it inside of this. I mean, this one that I saw was like inside of this wall. And you'd put your drum in there, and they had this thing that you turn, and it would tighten the ropes. And talking about some crispy snare drums over there, boy. And let's not even talk about the outfits, the costumes that they wear.
Yeah.
Right.
Those headpieces over there and stuff. It's just amazing. But I was so stoked to be a part of that drumming, and I learned the connection with the colonial style and the Swiss, man. And they're not separated at all.
Well, the crazy thing is, and this is what Jim and I were talking about today, is the story comes from, mainly Switzerland. The French would like to say, yes, we actually financed you, so we created it because we paid for it.
Yeah, that's a French thing. It sounds like them.
So it's funny. So, I mean, they have this constant battle of who created it, but then you start to think about it, fast forward to the 20th century, and you have Fritz Berger working with Alex Duther in the pipe band world, who works with John Bosworth, who's with the Air Force Drum and Bugle Corps in the 1950s with John Dowland and all that. And then 1960s, you've got, American Drum and Bugle Corps exploding, pipe band drumming exploding, the Basel style exploding. So and it's crazy because you can start to see a little bit of this is coming kind of back out again. And people they're into the story of drumming, and it's like we all have our own little chapter of it, and right. We're a part of this beautiful lineage of historical drumming that you know, we're passing it on to the next generation of kids.
You got that right, man. And proud of it too, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
All
have
right.
you heard this piece called Radic Tagwatch?
Yes.
You know that piece, don't you?
Yep, the Radek Togvok. Yep.
That is one hell of a piece of music. I think I played it for Glenn once a while ago, but it's funny. I just pulled it out the other day. I just found it and I went, oh, 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 oh.
I love it.
Isn't that a great little piece?
It's a great piece. It's classic.
Yeah, I got to get that one to you, Glenn.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So final question. If the current you could give your 20-year-old self some advice, what would you say to yourself?
I would say something that I said earlier, which I found out later on, is listen to as much music as you can. You know, that's what I would have told myself when I was 20. Although when I started teaching Santa Clara, I was pretty young. I think I started, well, I aged out in 73 and I officially took over the drumline in 1976. So right there, you know, I was right there. I was pretty young, and those are the kind of things that were on my mind. I think that would really be about it. Is like listen to as much stuff as you can to get educated. Whether you personally like it or not is irrelevant. You need to know and at least learn how to appreciate it. And that's done so much for a lot of my students and myself all the time. I go back and I listen to my collection and I just go, you know, you know, today I listen to a lot of music from the past that I haven't listened to in a while, and it just perks me right up. It's like, man, I need to turn more people onto this stuff. And, you know, then, you know, you get people that like Murray that come out of it, you know, that you turn people on to stuff and, you know, you're feeding them a little something and you watch this thing grow, and it grows way beyond what you could ever imagine or whatever kind of roots or limbs you have yourself. So that for me is listening to music, and I mean drum music, but more than that, I mean all music, all genres, all styles. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's my thing.
Yeah, I had to think about this for a while. I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I thought about it for a while.
So many things. It's like manage money better. But actually, you know what? When I thought about it for a while, and I think the one thing, if I was going to tell myself something, don't shun the spotlight. Back, you know, the entire time that I've done more interviews in the last couple of months than I've done in my entire life.
Yeah.
And way more
Zoom stuff.
Yeah, it's just, I've always been kind of, you know, I shun the spotlight. I like teaching, and I like to disappear so no one even knew that I was there. As long as the students and the groups are playing great, I could hang out and have no one even know that I'm there, and I was fine with that. And to Ralph's credit, he kicked me in the ass a few times and said, you know what, you go do that clinic. You do this. You need to get out there. Like, yeah, I remember saying specifically, you need to get out there, you know, so people know who you are. And I'm like, yeah. And even to this day, there's times I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of hemming and hawing about it. But every time I get a chance to do something like this, it's just such a great conversation. And I realize that I do love kind of being out in the public more than I probably want to admit. But I've always just kind of like, if I was going to say something, it's like, just be a little more open at the beginning. It took me a while to just be a little more giving of myself. To everyone besides students. Obviously, when you teach, you give everything you have. But I probably could have been a little bit better about just saying, all right, I can go out and talk a little bit more. It's okay.
You know what's really interesting about that is, I'll bring this up. I tricked Glenn, you know, when he first started coming around teaching. It was at a perfect time too. Ensemble rehearsal was getting ready to start, And we had just come back from lunch, which was right up this road from where we used to practice. And I was just going, man, how can I get Glenn to do ensemble rehearsal? Because he's never did ensemble rehearsal. And he never did anything with the brass except for drums. And we've talked so much, and I'm going, I got to get this guy up there, man, to run stuff. So, so all of a sudden I start doing this. Oh my God. You know, and it was like right when the core of the kids are like coming onto the field, because they know before dinner, we told them where to set up and get ready. We're going to start ensemble rehearsal from there. So they're coming out and getting set up and ready. And I'm going, Jesus. And I look over at the field and everybody's like there. And they're kind of looking around. And I'm like, oh, Glenn, man, you know, I gotta go to the restroom. I got to go back, walk up the road towards the restaurant. You know, I can't do this. You're going to have to take rehearsal. And he's like looking at me like, so before I could start cracking up, I just started going. I took about 20 or 30 steps. And I turned back around, and there's Glenn standing there like this going, you. And I just went, blah, get busy, they're waiting for you. And they were. And I come back, I go away for a while, and I come back, and he's having the most kick-ass, kick butt, ensemble rehearsal. And I went, yes. You know, it was like, I knew it because I knew it. And I always told Glenn this, and I tell a lot of people this. I wouldn't put anybody on a stage unless I really knew if they failed, they would know how to get up and finish the gig out and have everybody standing up for them. And that was a perfect example. I mean, Glenn had never done anything like that, but it needed to happen. And that was the quickest way. I mean, it was just perfect. The timing of it is not like I spent all day thinking about this or something. Just the timing of it came up, and I looked and I saw the core coming back, and we were just coming back, and I went, I'm a genius right now, what I'm getting ready to do. And I was so proud of myself because I'm telling you, the core was smoking with a fresh guy, and he had everybody right here. You know, and that's when I know you could tell, you know, people walking up, you can tell if somebody's got it or if they don't.
Yep.
Man, this guy's fun.
You know what's funny about
how did he get up there? Man, he had it looped, and I was like,
and that happened so many times. It became like almost a running gag when we were on tour that we had to do so many clinics on tour, and I always just didn't want to do them. You know, like, and I don't feel like being in the public doing this. And Ralph would just disappear before the clinic was supposed to start. So I was like, damn it. There was even one time, man, I don't know, I think it was in Ohio somewhere in like 89 or something, or 90, whatever it was. I knew we had a clinic coming up in like a half hour, an hour. So I was watching to make sure he didn't disappear, you know? And sure enough, I'm working with the battery, and I turn around, I see him walking out of the stand going, not this time. And I like haul butt over to try and catch him. By the time I got out of the stadium, he was gone. And I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, because I knew he was looking for me. I was hiding in the bushes someplace. You know, and he found out, man, that he could do whatever he put his head to. Because this is one thing I know about people that I surround myself with, whether it's your students or whatever. They got a lot more to say if you allow them the time or put them in a position, get it out. Because that's basically what happened to me, and I'm the same as Glenn, really, I am. I don't like a lot of attention. I never liked it. I just, to this day, I mean, it's okay. I mean, okay, you do like it, but it's like, it's not important. It's not,
you don't go looking for
do anything to be in the spotlight. You know, even if they're not worthy of it. It's like, God, don't you know that you're getting ready to get crushed? You know, just because you suck. You know, but Glenn was, you know, I knew something about him. You know, I learned something about him, man, because that's, you know, I'm very observant of people and their actions. And I'm going, this guy can do this because he wanted to. He had talked about it. Yeah, you know, I need to start getting into some of this kind of stuff. He had just mentioned it vaguely. and man, he just opened up a door, and I went, this is perfect. So I'm glad, because he can do anything he wants to do now, because he's figured out he's got it, you know, and he does. And I'll remind him all the time, you got this.
And I still need reminders sometimes too. I think everyone does. It doesn't matter, man. It's like you feel like when you talk about, you know, as much as we've learned, or the more you learn, the less you know. It's like, so there's still that. I don't know if it's so much insecurity as just the drive to want to constantly learn. It's like it's what keeps your being.
It really is. That's what it is.
You know.
You're right.
Yeah, I always tell people that I don't want to be known as an expert at anything other than if I could be an expert student. Like that's like my drive, and it's just something that has always kept me fresh over the years.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen,
I've been wanting to say this ever since, you know, I've seen you up there with that thing around your microphone and stuff. You have the most killer radio voice. I mean, you look like you're in a radio studio or something with all that set up, and I keep hearing your voice. I'm going, man, that's like a, you know, a real DJ voice you got here. So you got to.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, FM 93, the wave.
The wave.
All right, gents. Last little bit, gents. So, anything new on the horizon that people should be keeping their eyes out for?
Let's see, the MV Marching Vlogs drumline. There'll be some more. We're getting a link together to send donations to this food bank in the next few days. That performance is going to happen on August 15th, as long as everything stays cool and we manage to stay virus-free and everything's working. And then with Pacific Crest, we have a new thing called Virtual Studio. Everyone's kind of hopping on board with all this stuff, but we have a bunch of really good teachers for private lessons. I'm doing lessons on there, and I have room to, I mean, now that everything's going away, I got plenty of time to do lessons. I like to pick up probably another 10 students. I could handle that without any problem. That's the big thing. Those are the two things. Other than that, it's just waiting this out and seeing what's next.
Exactly.
Pretty much the same thing for me. You know, I haven't mentioned this, but back in the 80s, I had some great opportunities when Fred and I were teaching together for Drum Corps. We had an opportunity the drum companies were wide open for us experimenting. So the 14-inch snare drum was Fred and I's. You know, we started that. We even had a 13-inch drum, but we, you know, it was a little too, couldn't take the abuse. But, you know, quad setups, you know, that was our thing. Quints. Another thing, and this is a great story, and I'm just now starting to tell people about it. Fred and I were in this bar once, you know, just having some beverages and talking, and we'd always like have pencils and pens and napkins, and we'd be writing stuff. So Fred he made this set of quads on this picture. And he looks at me, he goes, you know what, man? If we cut the front of these things out, people will think that the drums are louder. I'm going, well, why would they do that? I mean, the engineers already had this thing figured out before we were born, you know, about circumference and depth. And he goes, exactly. But if we do that, people are going to think that, and I said, all right, well, let's try it, because we could do anything we wanted with drums. I mean, with Slingerland, when Larry Lincoln was over there, you know, before he became president of NAMM years ago, whatever you guys want to do. So after we got the snare drum thing, and then we started going with the regular wood finishes for drum corps instead of, but the main thing were those quads and those cutaways. And to this day right now, people think they're louder, but they're not. I mean, and how people go, well, no, that's not true. And I'm going, well, how come one set of concert toms can drown out a whole quad section? And it's not because they're up front and the drum line's in the back. It's because it's a full shell. Everybody's tried to, like, you don't see people, you know, cutting off their resonators on their, you know, $20,000 marimbas now, do you? You know, we've tried all of that stuff, man. I remember Blue Devils had bells that they trumpet bells that they
that was my
hold
first
in their
favorite
snare
one.
drum. Remember that? And good old Marty Hurley back in the day when they had those snares that they cut open. I mean, it was a different sound, but they weren't louder. I mean,
Right.
like I said, you know, the engineers had it figured out a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the quads are still alive and living, and they're all cutaways. And,
Hey, Ralph,
you know,
what about that, what's that project you just did with, was it David Starnes? You're writing some music for like some bands?
oh yeah, the what are they called?
It wasn't like a project to just write some music for bands to use for free or something if they.
Yeah, that's this thing that a bunch of us, there was like 4 of us percussion guys and like 4 or 5 brass guys, and they just got us all together to do these patriotic charts and these charts to give out free to all the junior high and high school bands in the United States because of this COVID thing, and nobody's has any programs or anything. So we're just like, we got this music, and then we got these drill guys that do little drills, and we got color guard people involved to do stuff with all the music, you know, just so, and it's available to everybody for free. And I stayed in over the country, and it's, I'm trying to remember the group that does it, but they're a pretty powerful pageantry group.
Yeah.
And they do mostly drill teams and cheerleaders. They're called university or something like that. I forgot the name, but they're huge, and they got tons of bucks, and they do all these big clinics and stuff for, like I said, mainly pageantry stuff. But yeah, they just got us all together and asked if we would do that for free. And I said, sure, no problem. I'll do 2 or 3 charts. And so I had a chance to write with Jay Bo Cook, and again, you know, who's one of the most talented arrangers. And then there's Jim Prime, and then there's Michael Clash that does all the stuff for Crown, Wayne Downey, and I don't know, there's just all these great guys that you know, we all grew up, you know, arranging for, you know, bands and drum corps and stuff. So yeah, that's the project. I forget the name of it, the whole thing, but I can get that information out to you. But it's on Facebook. But yeah, it's just each of us did like 2 or 3 charts. So we got about 10 charts, you know, that we put together, and different levels, beginning level, meteor, and you know, intermediate, and then advanced for every single marching band or music program in our country and overseas for free. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was so much fun to do. And of course I'd do something like that, you know. I hadn't written anything in ages. So it was really fun for me, and sending the charts to Glenn like the good old days. Hey, what do you think of this? Yeah, you know, and because it was fun just writing stuff again. I just hadn't done anything for a while. So now I'm back to writing again since then, and, you know, working on some fresh stuff to be published. And one of these days, Glenn and I are going to do a book together. We've been trying to do it now for about 3 years. and somehow it gets put aside for semi-legit reasons or whatever.
I know. It's not like we don't have time right now either. You know?
Right. It's just like, we're going to do it because we're obligated. And neither one of us, you know, have been in a rush to get a bunch of books and stuff out. I mean, we probably should have been doing that a long time ago to maybe make a little change here and there. But, you know, we're obligated, you know, to do something. So that's not over.
Now that we talked about it again, we'll get started on that. We've had some discussions. Yeah, it's actually some really cool ideas too.
We still got the notes, but that's as far as we've gone. So yeah, we got to get back into that.
So Mark, man, this is going to be like a 4-part series, right? Because we're
Absolutely.
we're almost 2.5 hours in.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Well, gents, we're definitely going to have to do a round 2 of this because I think I've got some other stuff in here. And honestly, it's been an honor to chat with both of you. And honestly, this has been fun. It's fun to talk drum corps stories, talk philosophy, talk about students and like their success. And quite honestly, the amount of connections that we all have together, like our paths right now are all just, they're all crossing and intersecting throughout our careers. So
Yep,
I just want to say thank you, gentlemen, for the wonderful time this afternoon. And I wish you the very, very best. And honestly, thank you so much for what you've done for our community, the music world in general. I mean, the music world is a better place because of the work that you've put forward. And I would say that because we've done that, we've actually made the world a better place. So thank you, gentlemen, both for your time and your...
And thank you for having us, Mark. And you know, we're not alone. I mean, you're right there and then some with the stuff that you do, especially like daily on Facebook and stuff, and you're drumming for everybody. And none of that stuff is easy. I mean, and to look at you know, your resume and stuff, what you've achieved in the time that you put in is remarkable. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to be in your shoes.
Yeah, it's great to be, Mark. This is a really enjoyable conversation. It's always an enjoyable conversation when Ralph's and we have a chance to talk, but this has been a great conversation. Good to meet you.
Yeah, and I can't wait to do another round. If you so want us to do something, we'd be more than happy, and you know, we can get some notes and really come up with some maybe a little bit more legit answers.
Well, gentlemen, I love it. This has been fantastic. I'm going to shut us down right now, and thank you so much for your time.
You bet, Mark. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Talk soon, Glenn.
Greetings again, everyone. We just wanted to take a second to say thank you to Seif Studios for their creative media. If you want to find out more about Seif Studios, look them up on www.seifstudios.com. We'd also like to say thank you to our educational partner, ProLogix Percussion, American-made drum pads. They're doing a special discount code for our listeners today. So if you go to www.prologixpercussion.com and type in TWT20, you will receive 20% off your entire order. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and please check out our supporters.